Welcome to Deep Thinking with Dr. Stephen Stoltz. I'm Dr. Stephen Stoltz, and today my special guest is Godwin Bradbeer, the well-known artist, and we're currently in his studio in Footscray, Melbourne. And so first of all, I just want to say thank you for the invitation for letting us come to your studio. And also, I wanted to just say thanks for also accepting my invitation, of course, to be on my podcast. Now, we're doing something a little bit different today. So first of all, a couple of different forms. So if you're listening to this on podcast form, you'll obviously hear us. And that's why I just want to mention that we're going to be in Godwin's studio. So there'll be all sorts of different sounds you might hear every now and then.
Even the cat meowing.
That's right, cat meowing and so on. And of course, this is also going to be available on YouTube and my website. So of course, if you want to see artwork and so on and so forth, then this is your opportunity. I'd encourage you to go have a look at Godwin's artwork on the YouTube option that's available to you. So I've asked Godwin to come on the show today to talk a little bit about creativity and creative thinking and so on. And the obvious question I have for you, Godwin, is, first of all, what does creativity and creative thinking and so on mean to you?
It's an intuitive, natural process of thinking and making, but it begins with thinking. I think there are two types of creativity. There's a kind of logical process of building, and there's lateral thinking. Creativity, I think, for me, is significantly lateral. So you're not necessarily thinking predictably. You're connecting unlikely things as you go. So, it's also something that I think, importantly, it's a thing that happens. It's not always applied to one's regular job, whatever that job might be, 9 to 5. There might be creative things occurring with that job, but for me, creativity is this way of behaving that occupies the void, that is the realm of boredom that you might experience. And I think I've often found myself saying in relation to creativity, which surprises people often, is that if you're entertained too much, you won't be creative. You often feel like you're in a creative zone when you're being entertained by something, but you're the audience in this situation. And I think people can confuse the two. So I think creativity can come out of solitude. I think it comes out of crisis, not necessarily out of well-being. And as I was suggesting to you before, perhaps the most blatant example of that is that most rock and roll comes from frustration, and most pop music comes out of the broken heart, and most poetry. So it doesn't come out of the fulfilled heart usually. You can have songs of fulfillment, but I think they're outnumbered by songs of yearning. So those things I think are very important for me in terms of creativity. It might say, while I'm on that, it's not necessarily having the best set of paints or having the full set of Derwent pencils. I knew people who had the full set of Derwents. I'm saying this slightly facetiously and metaphorically, but just because you've got a set of 100 colours or 50 colours or whatever, you're probably not going to do much better than the person with 3 colours or even an HB pencil. What you can do with a little, and when mentioning colour, and I'm not often associated with colour, the entire universe, the entire all our visible universe, 3 colours used in relation to white and black and radiance, and you get the full spectrum. So you can do, and rock and roll, 3 chords. You can do a lot with a little, and if you can't do a lot with a little, I think you're a bit spoilt, and your creativity is more a the product of affluence, which is not necessarily a great field for creativity.
Yep. Do you think artists are created or born?
Yeah, they're created.
I've stumped you.
Well, no, well, you sort of have, but being born is being created. So creativity and birth are pretty identical things. But that's the tabula rasa idea. I've just done an exhibition called Tabula Rasa. Tabula rasa being the idea: are you born blank, or are you born encoded with certain morality, certain principles, or something? Are they there? Do you know that murder is wrong from age 0?
Yeah.
You know, or do you learn that murder is wrong? And your question is similar to that. I do think, I think creativity is there in everybody, and I think at birth, but I think it becomes suppressed by the circumstances of life and indeed survival. But it also becomes released by I think just by being sensitive to your world, and by not just sensitive to nature, but also sensitive to your speech, sensitive to your listening, sensitive to your observation, whether you see the cat up there or I missed it, you know. And I think you have times of dormance, of it being dormant, other times of it being alert, and it can be triggered. And as I've said to you in previous conversation, I think creativity becomes triggered by, quite often by crisis. I try to avoid the word trauma because I don't think trauma is so severe sometimes it just kills creativity. But a crisis is something like maybe possibly, the broken heart, the ended romance, losing a job, divorce, separation. Divorce might be traumatic, but it might be a crisis. And quite often, the creativity just doesn't suddenly happen when you have a crisis. Within a year or two, you find you might go into decline and then you come out of it. And it's that surge as you come out of that crisis that yields the poetry, the music, the art, the scribbles, the paintings, whatever it is. So I think it becomes released by circumstance.
Yeah. I guess I was thinking a bit of it like this. I agree with you up to a point that creativity is an innate aspect on most human beings.
Sure.
However, no matter how hard I try, and no matter how much I practice, maybe tuition from you, I'm never going to be able to create artwork like yourself or like other artists.
Sure.
And I'm wondering, when does that innateness transition to over a point where I can actually say with confidence, now I'm an artist or I'm truly creating an art form? Oh, sorry, mate.
You've got a friend.
Yeah, he really loves me, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So do you understand
I do.
the thinking behind my question a little bit there?
Yeah. Well, I think most people would check you in your first statement that you don't want to do it like Godwin, and you don't want to do it like whoever this other person is.
Yeah.
You do it like you.
Yeah.
And you've got to identify when it's authentic to you, and when it becomes worthy of exposure beyond you. You know, like like art, let's say drawing, or a very elementary form of art. It often begins in the lap, you know, drawing like this, and that's an intimate space, so it's drawn, and it sort of maybe is for you. The next thing is maybe drawn at a table or a desk, so others can see it. At an easel, it becomes much more confronting, and it toughens you. Like taking a drawing class recently, I said, don't shrink from the easel. The easel is the first step in you making your work public. And I think your art really, it doesn't, I think it's when it steps out into the public that it really becomes, it goes beyond hobby, it goes beyond beyond therapy. I think it's important to communicate it out into the world. Doesn't mean you have to have an exhibition. It could just be that you give it to a friend or give it to your mother, or give it, that you give your work away or you sell it or you expose it in an exhibition and you realize it's left you, like a child has left you and it's gone out into the world by itself. That's when you start to feel, oh, this is art. I'm putting something so intimate about me out into the world. And you know, I could well say art has belittled itself by, in fact, art schools have been complicit in that, there's this sense that everything you do is art, and eventually you sort of break down the whole sense of what it is. You know, we can all think of examples of extremity or ridiculousness that have been called art. And in art schools, we allow students to do the ridiculous, but we also encourage them to critique it and think, does it stand? Will it? So you have to be willing to be ridiculous to be an artist. It's one of the reasons art often goes hand in hand with a kind of form of bohemianism and a slight kind of, I quite like the word promiscuous, a slight, like anything can happen with this guy because he's an artist, you know. But it's partly because the thinking is lateral and you're connecting this to that and coming up with new ideas. Can anybody do it? You're sort of saying, can I become an artist?
It's an interesting question because I remember I had a long debate with someone about this, or it's actually part of I think I told you I'm part of this Nietzsche study group out of America, and I'm forever defending art because Nietzsche has a lot of very interesting things to say about art, which I'll get to in a minute. But one thing came very obvious in our conversations around when does an art turn into an artist? And of course, my response was always, well, when someone else says that you're now an artist. It's not when you start selling works. No. It's when one or more individuals start saying, no, Godwin, you're now an artist. And I was, there's a fascinating paradox to that. That is inbuilt within this whole notion of when art turns from, you know, the creator creating art, and then when you're actually assigned, you're now an artist as opposed to creating. And I think in previous conversations you said something that was very interesting here, if you don't mind mentioning it. You said, I can create in notebooks and it can be all very internal and private, but until I'm prepared to kind of expose myself a little bit and show it to others, then it's questionable that I can call myself an artist, if that makes sense. Have I kind of got the crux of that properly there, you think?
Yes, I think so. It's a little bit like if a tree falls in the forest, you know, can anybody hear it? And yes, I think
it's quite paradoxical, you know, because I agree we can all create, but then there's something about the other with a capital O that if it's not the other who's really saying now that this is art, and then you assign a kind of significance to, oh God, when you're now an artist.
Look, there'll always be a category created to draw into the fold of art people who are outside of art. So you do have what's called outsider art now, which is usually done by the mentally ill, maybe prisoners in jail, or people who are, you know, have got a fixation on something and they just can't stop a particular type of scribble. And they maybe don't want to exhibit it, and they just do it now. They're a bit like a hoarder. They just hoard stuff, and they do. Like I know of an example I've talked about with a friend in recent weeks of somebody who died. His house was full of thousands of paintings he did, and he'd never had an art exhibition. So was he an artist? The art world, quite rightly, will create a category for him, and it'll be called outsider art.
Okay.
So he's brought into the fold. But I think generally I'd say to claim that you're an artist, you have to have the courage to back up what you do.
Yep.
So you can't, that's why I say don't shrink from it, take a step forward. There are lots of parallels with a child developing from babyhood to infancy to toddlerhood to a walking child. You've got to get up, you've got to fall, and you've got to move forward, and eventually you have to walk away from the parent. And the artist, the art has to leave the artist eventually. But if you clutch onto your art for your whole life, no, you're not an artist. No, you're too afraid. So you have to be a little bit fearless, and you have to fail a lot. Artists fail a lot. I'd say generally the art that's.
Would you say you failed a lot with your art? I'm talking about.
Well, different form. I'll change the word fail to fall. Take the I out, put an L in. I fall a lot, and I do a lot. Even this work here behind me, which may or may not be in camera. It's 3 meters high. It's of a falling figure, and it's called Fall. And I showed you a work just before we began talking that's got a tear right through the middle.
Yes.
And that tear is used in the title of several works I've done to mean tears or to be a tear. In Christian mythology, the veil of the temple torn from top to bottom at the crucifixion, the crack in everything. And the theme of the crack, the damage, the fall, one way or the other is resident in many of the world's religions.
That's right.
Wabi-sabi in Japan, it's present in the whole idea that you should not make the perfect, you aim at perfection, but you cannot make it perfect, or it's a form of blasphemy which can exist in Muslim.
Well, it's like
Islam.
Genesis, the fall, Adam and Eve. Yeah.
So those themes of failure and fall, but you have to be willing to fail. And I just offered myself up to do a workshop with an art school recently, and I was asked if I'd do some drawing classes, and I said, not the conventional ones I'm associated with. I'd like to do a session called Getting Out of Trouble, because as an artist you get yourself into trouble all the time. Well, I can get you out of trouble. I know ways of getting out of trouble, and one of the ways of getting out of trouble is just change the title. It's a bit like being a cook. In a kitchen, you're cooking up something that comes out too soft. Well, just change the title. Change it from crumble to something else. Just change the name of it. But that's one thing. But whatever your imagery might be, there are lots of ways of rescuing a work. I mean, you can take a work like this, and if you fail with it, cut it up into 40 pieces, and you've got 40 pieces that look quite beautiful abstractions, and turn that into a book, and or turn it, montage it. But there are many ways of redeeming yourself when you fail, and that's really exciting. But following the formula is not actually the artist's way. Following the formula is artisanship. You're given a plan, you're given a matrix, you're given a stencil, you follow the pattern, you get this result. That is used in artistic form, but in itself, that's not really the artistic process.
Now that's a good segue into my next question, because I did have a question about this, because again, I'm a bit of a Nietzsche scholar, and so Nietzsche talks about being original, right?
Sure.
And he says, I don't want to be like everyone who's just like a repeat of a repeat, like a copy of a copy.
Sure.
So he's obviously talking about other books or authors. He's also talking about musicians and so on and so forth, right? And so I guess the question I have, because this goes back a little bit to creativity a bit, is that how do you then make like, how is not your work a repeat of something else, and how are you making it original? Like, how are you making work that is original, that's not repeating of something? If that makes sense.
Well, yeah,
does that
of
make
course
sense?
Of course it does.
That is a segue from your previous question,
Yeah, sure.
as in you're not following a recipe.
Not following
Yeah,
a recipe,
yeah.
but different cultures, different things. Indigenous culture, Australian Aboriginal art has primacy position in the contemporary Australian art, and it celebrates two things that Western art doesn't celebrate, that the 20th century European American art did not celebrate. It has narrative, they tell their stories, and the stories are ancient, and they're trying to keep them constant. Whereas Western art in the 20th century was hell-bent on not being storytelling. Abstraction, most abstraction was very proud of the fact that it was not telling a story. It's paint on a canvas that has purpose in itself. Don't even look for a horse or a man or a woman in that painting. It's about paint on canvas. And by the hundreds, abstract painters in the 20th century proclaimed that they were not telling a story. That's for the television. Television will tell you a story. Painters don't do that. So that's in complete conflict with indigeneity. You could also say Japanese brush painting, Chinese brush painting. I've got a book on Japanese painting. It's got a single stroke with the brush. I've got some of these Chinese brushes just behind Rebecca over there. Single stroke, drop down, drag, lift. It says in the text, students learning this should spend 3 years learning this one stroke.
It's very Japanese.
It's a bit like karate, your first stroke is your last stroke. But so there are cultural traditions where it has to be repeated, and in Egyptian art, for example, it's repeated. The imagery of the human body is repeated for 3 millennia. And the figures are never allowed to be naked, and they're never allowed to lean into one leg. They have to always be rigid, straight, like a soldier. So there are cultures that forbid change.
Sure.
And then there are cultures that allow minuscule change. That's the sign of a master, but the non-master can't even detect it. And then you've got Western art, where you've got to be original every day.
Exactly. So
you pick where you want to be within that spectrum.
So let's bring it back to you. How do you then keep your work fresh and original? See,
all right, my work doesn't seem to change much. As I said, the work over here is 45 years old. This work is about 10 years old.
That's the one directly sitting behind us.
Only a few months old. That's 3 years. So, and you quite often would look and you think, well, you could do them all the same. In fact, if I find a failed work from 30 years ago, I'll rework it. I might change the date. I might say 1995/2006. Means I did it in 95, and 2006 I altered it.
Would you say that is then a signature aspect of your work? If that makes sense, because clearly the body features in your work.
All right.
And so is that a fair representation?
Of course it is, my principal subject is the human body, and largely because I felt it was neglected in my youth. It was neglected in 20th century art, and I thought, I thought of all the things I can be absolutely confident about, and one has to be existential, my own existence and your existence. And I'll try to describe that existence without the accoutrements of culture, that is the clothing, the hairstyles. I'll just do a naked man, a naked woman. I'll try to say everything via that. And you could say, well, that's a tall order, but would you say that to Rudolf Nureyev or Michael Jackson? Or or a ballet dancer. Dancers use the body to try to say everything. And I use the human body to try to say the important things I want to say. I step outside of it, I work with some certain other things, but the human body, if I can't say it via the image of the self and the other, the man, the woman, I feel a certain loss of faith in human. In fact, my endeavor to make the human figure a constant, proud symbol within the culture is actually an expression of my feeling of despair about humanity, or most of my work has a melancholia in it, a sadness and a hurt and a pain, but I always want it to have a residual beauty that makes it look like it's imperative that it survives. And a sub-theme within that, because I mainly work with images of men, is that men are in the dock in my work. What is a man, and are men good or are men bad? And so when you have stuff like the Harvey Weinstein stuff, or this terrible thing with pedophilia recently, it really affects the way I draw a man. I have to drop their heads. I have to cover their faces. I have to bring the darkness in. Are you
apologizing? It sounds like you're apologizing for all these kind of evils.
Well, I've done an exhibition called Apology. I have. It's interesting you say that.
Yeah, it sounds like you're almost apologizing for these evils.
Well, I'm not.
I am. Up to a point. Yeah,
I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I did an exhibition called Apologia, and I've done. And the key image I did for that was a bowing head of a man. And then I did another version, it was bigger than this one actually. And then I did a second one that was the same bow. It was called Apologia, and then it had a second part to the title, 1,000 Tears. And with translucent impasto acrylic paint, transparent, I did 1,000 teardrops over the whole picture.
Yeah.
So it's just, and then I did another version. So I did 1,000 tears, and then I did another one, 1,000 tears, and I tore it 1,000 times. So these were forms of apology in art. Sometimes actually, they're almost, I didn't think they're very subtle. I thought they were kind of very strong, but sometimes they're too subtle for people to actually perceive or comprehend.
Really? They found that too subtle to...
Well,
okay,
all right, can I have a little bit of a bitch here?
Yeah, yes,
all right, I'll give you a little bit of, like, I've lived side by side with abstraction all my life, in art schools, in art society, and currently. And I engage with abstraction. I enjoy some of it, I comprehend some of it, and I even use it to an extent quite often as fields within which I work when I'm doing my work. But I'll make a point that's both in praise of abstraction and a criticism of it at the same time. It works more as a praise, and that is this. Abstract painting operates, and its success operates largely on, I'm not thinking of Picasso, by the way,
yeah, sure.
He's more figurative than abstract. I'm talking about somebody like Mark Rothko, who does fields of red and fields of blue and whatever, and violet. Abstract painting, non-representational abstract painting, operates on the premise that the less you describe, the more you can imagine.
Okay.
Got that?
Yeah.
So that I've got a painting over there that looks almost completely white. See this? It's a drawing. This
yes,
one here.
Yeah.
It's but if it was white, it'd probably even when you look at a white work, or even with a little bit of few marks on it, you can imagine the void. You can imagine heaven into it. You can imagine before birth into it. You can imagine purity. You can imagine soiled. You can imagine forever. But if you suddenly do a picture of a man like this, well, he draws a picture of a man like this. End of fucking story. You know, oh, you've drawn a face, it looks a bit Asian. You like drawing Asian faces. End of story. And So you've got a picture of nothing. You can imagine everything. You've got a picture of a person. You can imagine one thing. So if I work a theme of tragedy, despair, complexity into a figurative image, quite often people think, oh, you've drawn another nude woman. End of story. Look beyond.
Yeah.
You know, you do that when you're at the cinema or watching an actor. You know, you see them, you hear them speaking. You know, there's you know, in great acting and great dancing, there's depth. Look beyond the obvious. And I think that's getting back to the notion of creativity. See beyond the obvious.
Yeah.
And then see the metaphor within the, you know, the possibility of metaphor. So
see, that's my next question for you.
Sure.
So I think it's really important now because I want to talk to you about subjectivity.
Sure.
And you know that's a topic and theme that's dear to my heart.
Sure.
I'm actually going to write a book on this.
I'm
so what
interested.
role does subjectivity here play? So what I hear you talking before about that work before,
Yeah.
you know, like realism, I see your work as a kind of realism kind of representation of sorts.
Sure.
Versus, you know, more abstract, which is more
Yeah.
a subjective, open to interpretation, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Up to a point. I'm interested in your thoughts on what role does subjectivity play in creativity and just creative thinking in general, and just in your thoughts in general around subjectivity and art. Or I'll let you answer it however you like here.
Yeah.
But
look, I think art making cannot not be subjective. It just is.
yeah,
You'll always filter it, like whatever it is you might draw or paint or sculpt or whatever, you'll do it through your own limitations, and that'll be manifest. That'll manifest your subjectivity. Like I'll give you a few examples. Let's say whether you draw a person or whether you draw an object, or you've got maybe a group of people, a class, whatever, 20 people, they draw somebody or an object. Even before you start talking about the things like proportion or anatomy or whatever, you can look at a picture and think, all your lines are diagonal from the lower left to the upper right. So you're right-handed, and you never vary it. All your lines are going like this. If you're massaging somebody or caressing somebody, do you just go like that all the time, or do you move with the body?
yeah,
And it's if you're drawing somebody, move with the body. Don't just draw it like it's rain. And I notice that when you're drawing things, and this is common in life drawing, none of your lines hit the edge of the page. Why is that? You've got these, you know, maybe somebody who's really quite confident person, they draw, and their drawing just dies in the middle of the page. They do a few lines that fade out. Just think, what, you're like a pre-Columbian sailor. You're afraid that if you go to the edge of the page, you might fall off the world. You're not going to fall off the edge of the world. You're going to hit. And you take a look at your photos. Your photos don't fade out toward the edge. Oh, the edge is dangerous. And I've looked at a class of people, and 80% of them don't even hit the edge. You know, they're scared to go to the edge of the drawing. I said, you know, if your field of vision is pretty infinite, and yet you're shrinking into the middle. And they're all things without even criticizing. They're the subjectivity. So you can look at a drawing and just say, that person's afraid of the paper. That person's right-handed. That person's left-handed. That person's...
see, that's really interesting because...
or curvy lines.
What you're really saying is that their work is a representation of the individual creator, and there's something about that.
Yeah, you can read quite a lot of sight.
Yeah.
It's not just like reading handwriting, but it's you can sort of sense.
It's like their psyche on paper.
Yeah, like what I'll do too. You're talking about subjectivity. All right, here we go. This is very specific about something I'll maybe do in drawing. They're drawing the human body. A class of a dozen, a class of 20. At some point, and I'm not the only one who'll do this, you say, stand back and look at your drawing. What do you think happens?
Well, they probably either go too close or not far enough away.
That's exactly right.
It's the maximum grip.
You say,
you've got to go different perspectives.
Exactly. I would say, stand back, look at your drawing, and I'll look out. nobody stands back. What a few people do is
stay too
lean back.
close.
Lean back. They hold the easel and they lean back, and maybe 3 or 4 people in the room do it, and the others don't. So say nobody in the room stood back and looked at their drawing.
So that doesn't surprise
I said, let go of your work, turn your back on it, walk 5 paces back, turn around and look at it. And I make them do it. They stand back, and I said, see what happened? You stand back and you think, oh my God,
I bet you they're frightened by it.
looks pathetic.
Yeah, they'd be frightened by it too.
I said, so what happens when you get back, look at it from a distance, you see objectively, and you're too afraid to do that. And as soon as you're at a distance, you can see what you know. And then I say, you have to, when you walk back and look at it, you really got 5 or 6 things to do. One, you've got to have you've got to break the psychological hold and protection of your own work, walk away from it, that's one thing. Next thing, look at it and suffer the embarrassment of your own work. I'm not even going to ask people next to you to look at your drawing to intensify the embarrassment, but just experience the objective reality of what you've done. And next thing is analyze, why are you embarrassed? It's too faint, it's too small, the head's too big, the legs are too short, you're using wispy little lines that have no confidence, or you're hiding your behind strident marks that are a way of saying, I'm strong, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm strong. What is it? What's wrong with the drawing? Then you've got to work out, diagnose it. Okay, the head's too big. I've either got to make the head smaller or make the body bigger. I've got options for how to manage that proportion. And then you've got to have the will to do it and get in and do it.
That's a real challenge. You really put it to them.
You did not stand back and look at your drawing because you knew that is too hard.
Yeah. You almost sound like a therapist when you talk too.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, like as in like you are really helping them trying to work through
most people making art do not want to see the truth. They want to protect what they're doing and in the belief that everything they do is good. Now, so I'm saying 2 things. You have to give yourself over to failure and engage with it. You don't, and the difficulty is not shameful, and the failure is not shameful. But the unwillingness to see what you're really doing objectively is shameful. You should know the truth of your own expression, and you should take command of it. So it's actually fantastic.
Yeah. Now,
and the other thing is, nobody gets hurt. It's art. It's not even like training in karate or jiu-jitsu. You're not going to throw somebody on the floor. You're not going to go, it's not bungee jumping. This is just harmless art. So be brave about it.
Yeah.
Nothing to lose.
Yeah. Now, earlier I mentioned psyche on a page of sorts. That's a metaphor. Would you say your work is a representation of your psyche on a page? And if so, what is that?
That's a mysterious question.
It is a bit.
And it's, I think the answer is yes. I had an exhibition that ended a few days ago of drawings I did in my teenage years. And which was very unusual to be invited to do that. Somebody who knew my very, very early work invited me. And it was a beautiful invitation. I found it one of the most emotionally moving shows I've done.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I actually gave a floor talk, and I wept while I was at 2 points while I was speaking it.
Yeah.
And it was to do with what you've just asked.
Yeah.
I found.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
There was stuff in my drawings from age 15 that's still in my work now, and knowing where that came from and why it had lingered so long. It kind of really affected me, and a number of the drawings. My parents, when they saw I was interested in art, and I said I really liked they'd given me at the age of 14. They gave me a book on Leonardo, and then a couple of years later a book on Rodin, the French sculptor, and I copied nearly every picture in the book, and the the whole idea that why I liked it so much, at an age where I should have been kind of surfing and
playing cricket and footy.
The mystery of...
Like the only thing that matters in life is cricket and footy, right?
The mystery of why I thought this was wonderful, I actually can't understand. And I do try to get away with... I do other things. I play a bit of music and I record a bit of music and a few other things. But I pull back to... Even in this beautiful melancholia seems to call me back. And I'm not a depressive person.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a fairly happy person. Yeah. But if I make my work too bright and colourful and happy, it looks fake. And you've got to watch that too, A lot of, nearly so much, look, I'm glad we have of course, I'm glad we have an abundance of colour in our culture, but quite often art is immediately, when people think art, they think, oh, it's colour. I quite often think colour disguises so much, because colour is so beautiful. It's like throwing bright clothing over the reality of a person. Sometimes I've used...
It's almost hiding something.
Yeah. Well,
there's a superficiality
Well, it's
there.
interesting you say that, because I've used this phrase defensively or descriptively sometimes, and my phrase is that drawing shows the artist naked.
Yeah.
The artist naked. I'm not saying the model. Drawing shows the artist naked. Painting shows the artist with clothes on. Photography is the artist hidden. You don't see the photographer unless they're shooting into a mirror. That gives you slightly different psychological points of initiation in the work. So when you're drawing, struggle is evident immediately.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. That's why
when
it's so
you photograph,
important to know the artist.
you don't see struggle at all.
Yeah.
And so for people who draw, they eventually usually have to come up with this thing that, the struggle to make the image is part of the beauty of the image.
Yeah, okay. See, that's interesting, because I was going to ask you a question. I want to circle back. We talked earlier, and before we did the interview, you talked a bit about suffering. I know you don't like using the word trauma, but you get what I mean in terms of crises and suffering.
Yep, exactly.
There's a well-known trope with artists, you need to suffer for your art, and that can mean so many different things.
Yep.
But you have mentioned it a few times now, and we've had different conversations over time. Just tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that. I don't mean as in suffering, as in I've got to do this body of work and I'm suffering because I'm all up all hours of the work. Yeah, I'm sure that's one part of it, but what do you think that means? Like, why do we need that pain and suffering in order to kind of create art? Is that necessary? I mean, do you need to really suffer to create art? I mean, it's a multifaceted question, but I hear you talking, saying that yes, I have to suffer in order to create. Kind of
my answer is definitely yes, definitely yes. But I don't say I have to suffer more than other people. I think the people around me who don't make art suffer more than I do. They might not, but I can think of people who suffer a lot, and they not just from illness or whatever, but suffer from their struggle as a medical person. Imagine somebody in Médecins Sans Frontières, the suffering that they're not only exposed to, but the suffering of persevering within war zones. And I think people with an incredibly boring job, or people who have to count stuff all day, I think that's much more suffering than I have in the studio. So I'm not... Yes, you do have to suffer to make art, but you don't have to suffer more than other people. Yeah. I think I suffer less than other people, and I'm actually a lucky guy. But I've had I've had some bad experiences, and the art has been an antidote and has been part of the cure. But I'll give you a little insight I don't know if it's an insight, but an example of something that I regard as, well, actually, I used to say this to students, because some students will work in simple forms. They'll work small, they'll work with medium size, they work with difficult material, there might be sculptors, there might be filmmakers. But I'd say, I might be asked a similar question, do we have to suffer for our art? I'd say, yeah, you do, but not all the time. Work sensibly. Work sensibly and work frequently, and come back to it even when you don't feel like it. Don't work all the time. Give yourself breaks, but work sensibly. But this is to people who are already in art, not just beginning. I'd say every 2 years, make a work of art that's going to sting. It's going to hurt you. It's going to be, and of course the students will say, what do you mean by that? And I say, it's too big. It's too big not just to carry, it's too big for my car. Or it's going to be too expensive to do it. Or it's too intense. Or it's too psychologically confronting.
Or it's controversial.
Or it's controversial. Or it's something else. But if you don't do the big risk ones intermittently, and it can be, once every 6 months or 2 years or something like that, I could point at works in here, they're just ridiculous. That drawing fell on top of me. It's a drawing of a fallen man. I've broken my neck when I was 21. I was in hospital, I was in a neck brace for a long time. And then in my early 60s, I drew this drawing of a man fallen, and it was up high like that, and I pulled it forward to adjust the clips, and the whole heavy board with the drawing fell on me. So it was a fallen drawing, a drawing of a fallen man fell on top of me. It nearly killed me. My head just missed the radiator, and it landed on a hard floor. But everybody has accidents sometimes, but that's not my best example of suffering. My best example of suffering is this. Whether I'm married, whether I've got kids, or whether I'm living alone, I work a lot at night. I like working at night. I don't have the interference of people and joyfulness and the sunlight. You're in the existential space. And I like to work at least till midnight, and often work till 1 o'clock, even 2. And sometimes I'll be working on a drawing, and it's maybe 10 o'clock, and I'm just adjusting something in the eye, or something here or here, wherever it might be, and that's too hard, so I soften it. It's too soft, it looks cosmetic, so go in. It's just too hard, it's too soft, it's too hard, it's too dark, it's too light, it's too sharp, and I'll go back and forward with this one little for 2 hours. And I think if somebody was watching through the window, they'd think, that guy is nuts. That guy, it looked good already, and he's changed it like a dozen times. And lots of artists do that. So
sometimes how do you know when it's finished, though? I guess the logical question I ask from that is, when do you then consciously go, no, I'm finished and I'm going to put my name to it now?
All right. Well, there are different mediums allow it. For example, I often say, especially to students who haven't got a body of work, they want to work quick and get a lot done, I say, do ink drawings with a brush, not with a pen, with a brush. And they say, why? Because ink drawings look dramatic. You always finish them. You can't overwork an ink drawing. You go once you get 20 brush strokes down, it might look a bit messy, but it looks fucking marvelous. Whereas a drawing like this, which is done with maybe 30 or 40,000 strokes, never finishes. You can go on forever. So some mediums finish quicker than others. A pencil drawing, for example, I remember seeing a student doing a pencil drawing. She did it for about 3 months. I begged her to stop. I said, you're trapped. You're in a whirlpool. You're just getting dizzy. You're going right.
In a black hole.
It was a form of, you're in a black hole.
Yeah, black hole.
What? And she said, I want it to be perfect. I said, perfectionism is a form of paralysis. Get the hell out of there. And
Agreed.
A beautiful example of finishing is something a high school teacher said to me when to the class when I was, 14 or something. He drew a line. The line was probably about 10 foot long, and just said, okay, a frog is going to jump from the start to the finish. Every time he jumps half the remaining distance. How many jumps will it take him to get to the end? And 1, 2, 3, 8, sir. No, not 8. No. Somebody else, 1, 2, 3, 4, 12. And then once you see 20, you realize he's never going to get that.
Yeah.
Because every time he jumps, it's half the remaining distance. That happens with all of these pictures. And it's partly because you are, like I said, perfection's a form of paralysis. You're aiming at a form of perfection of this idea in your head. The closer you get, the more you realize, I'm not there yet, I'm not there yet, I'm not. And eventually you just got to just say, I'm done, walk away.
How do you know when you're done? You'll just know. You'll just intuitively
all right.
know.
I'll go back to this thing late at night.
Yeah.
This is, I love this moment, and nobody witnesses it because everyone's gone to bed and you're by yourself. I've been working and maybe had music on. I turn the music off if I'm in trouble. If it's going real good, I'll crank the music up. But maybe if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I've turned it off. But you're doing this thing, you're polishing it, or I polish my work, but this is not right. And then eventually you do this and that, and then you think, I think it might be okay. I'll turn my back on it. I'll make a cup of tea. I go and make a cup of tea. I come back, start drinking. I'll look at it. I'm leaning forward, ready to work, and I'll lean back. That's fantastic. And 1 o'clock in the morning, I can't get my eyes off it.
Yeah.
I think I did that. Fantastic moment. And it's private and it's finished. It's finished enough.
Yeah.
And then if I'm still restless for something else, that's the next picture.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. That's the difference between an artist and a non-artist. For an artist, the work of art gives birth to another one. And that's why the worst thing you can say as a student or a kid in an art class is to go to the teacher and say, I finished, sir, or I finished, miss. No, it never finishes. And like if you're in a life drawing class, for example, really, it never finishes. If you think, if I do any more to this, it's going to ruin it. Yes, that happens. Well, then you take it off and you do another one. You don't say, I'm finished, so can I go early? Yes, you can, but you will never be an artist with that attitude. So.
Yeah. All right, now we're running out of time here because I need to keep this to about an hour. I'm getting in trouble with producer Luke, the truckie from Petrie.
He's a bugger, that guy.
Now, on the topic of creativity, creative thinking, so on, do you think we've missed anything? Or is there anything you want to finish with? You and I are talking about creativity broadly. Do you think we've missed anything?
I hope
you think we should? Well, I'm pretty sure we have probably, but because there'll be someone listening and say, why didn't you ask Godwin this or that? Which I do get that every now and then. But of course, we want to keep this within a manageable time frame. But we're talking about creativity broadly, of course, here. And so is there anything you'd like to finish on before we kind of wrap up? And I'll get you to talk about exhibitions in a minute.
I'll give you a dig. I don't especially like the use of the word creatives in our society now. It's used
as in like he's a creative type.
Yeah, I live at the cotton mills here, and there are lots of artists here, and they're of different types. And continually hear the word. That we're creatives, and I prefer artists. I think both. Part of it's just an old guy's prejudice, but I think creatives does cover more disciplines, and that's good. But I also presume, I like to presume everybody's creative. and really, I can't say everybody's an artist, because a lot of people do want to just leave early and get out of the room.
Agreed.
And if you want to leave early and get out of the room, you're not an artist. You might be a different kind of artist in another place. You might be a fantastic dancer. You just want to go to a disco. Well, you are an artist there, but you're not an artist here because you just want to get away. So I do like, but
it's what we talked about earlier, and again, this is a great little segue to wrap us up, is that I agree that all human beings have a creative capacity, without a doubt, hands down.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. However,
and could I? You have to say, because it's not said often enough, it's that giving birth to a child is the greatest form of creativity that we can do.
Oh, without a doubt, it's like a miracle.
It is a miracle.
It's like a miracle, whether you're religious or not.
Yes, it is.
Well, I know it has religious connotations when you talk about miracles, but I've been lucky enough to be present for the birth of 4 of my children.
Right.
And each time, I swear, it's a miracle kind of thing.
It's a sad, it's a tragic an irony I can understand, but it is a creative thing. But from the knowledge of the women I know, my own daughter who recently had a baby, and a neighbour who recently had a baby, my own mother, women aren't always recognised in society appropriately as having done this magnificent creative thing that there's no comparison with anything else. And many of the women I've taught in art school have come back to art school after children, and it's kind of like they've been handicapped because they had children, and but they usually find themselves again. They have their own renaissance, but it's just a form of creativity, and it does put the genders out of balance, but it's an imbalance that I don't think is wrong. A lot of people think it shouldn't be like this. It is like this. And I think the fact that men can't do that just alters the way they relate to the creative profession, and it can create problems. But in itself, it's not a bad thing. It's just the nature of human beings.
You see, I think there's something fascinating. Obviously, we have Mary in Catholicism, Mary's held up to esteem for a whole range of reasons. One of them for the very reason you mentioned before.
And the Protestants neglect it.
Yes, of course. And then other religions too give precedence, if you like, to creativity, through birth as well. They do it in different ways, of course. Anyway, we're not here to talk about religion, I know, but it's very interesting here as you talk about that, because there's something in that creative process, as in like giving birth, that is something profound. There is something really existential to that. And I just want to circle back, because we're almost finished here, I want you to finish on this point before you start talking about your exhibitions points for people who are listening in. I always find fascinating, I agree we can all create, however, there's that transition point that separates the artist from those who just create. So I can build something, I can build a chair. I can create something, and there can be something beautiful about it. And we never even had a chance to talk about beauty here. But anyway, I can find form and function, cars, chairs, things we use. But there's something fascinating that transitions over to when we can say that truly is a piece of artwork. And so there's that fascinating aspect, and you've kind of touched on it, and I think we could talk about it for a lot longer, but I wanted to give you the final word before you start talking about your exhibitions.
Look, I don't think we'll find an absolutely fixed way of defining art. Art's one of those short words, like God, freedom,
love,
that are, in order to be God, in order to be love, in order to be free, in order to be art, they have to be infinite in their scope. And by being infinite, it means they're beyond definition. So we struggle with the definition, and that's as it should be. But I think art, it's not absolutely fixed like that. An interesting thing is when we look at the art of ancient cultures, it's usually architecture, pottery, weapons. It's not oil paintings, drawings, and it's usually sculpture too. But depending on how ancient it is, you can actually find a bit of garbage from 5,000 years ago, and it becomes a precious archaeological object. And I like the relationship between archaeology and art. So quite often, the fact something survived turns it into art.
This is good. This is the point I wanted to finish on, the relationship between creativity and art. This is the last point I wanted to finish on, really, because that's a fascinating relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, so, it is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's something fascinating about that relationship. So
is.
Where you transition across.
Yeah, that's right.
And thank you for mentioning, art within love, God. We missed truth. You mentioned truth before.
That's right.
These are kind of like universal kind of qualities and quantities.
Right.
Probably more qualities than anything. But now I'm conscious of the time. Now, Godwin, before I finish up here, can you tell listeners, people listening, about your exhibitions so they know where it is, when it might be on, which art galleries?
Well, it's a little bit. This is just a little bit sad, but I do have a show opening on the 2nd of August, so it's about 3 or 4 weeks away, at James Macon Gallery in Collingwood, Melbourne. But it's his last exhibition. After about 18 years, he's closing the doors of the gallery, and I've got the last show. So that's it's a big exhibition, and I think it's a good one. It's called The Ordinary Sublime, and it'll run through August, and then that gallery closes, and I'll be a free agent for a while. I do have a gallery in Adelaide, that's BMG Art, which I have been showing at since the mid-90s. I have a show in Paris. I have a gallery in Paris called La Capitale. It's in the Marais, in the heart of Paris. I showed there last year, and I hope to show there again in the future. I'm in a smattering of the regional and other galleries and state galleries, but I'm not always on show. But they come and they go, and
you'll be able to find those for future exhibitions if you go to Godwin's website. If you just go to any search engine and type in Godwin Bradbeer in a search engine, you'll find your website.
Yeah.
And you always list your exhibitions there and any showings or anything.
It's a bit. It's not always up to date, but I always have information online about my exhibitions, and something you may be able to get, but I don't. Is if you're seriously interested, Thames and Hudson published a beautiful book in 2018, written by Janet Mackenzie, an arts writer based in Scotland, and I think it's a beautiful.
It is.
I was so happy with that volume. It's a beautiful moment of my life.
Do you know how many different places I've seen that now? I sent you a text message with a photo at the Geelong Gallery, but I'm serious. It's everywhere I go.
Geez.
It is an excellent collection. It really is.
And I grew up loving art books, and to have such a beautiful art book is one of the life privileges for me.
It's a fantastic.
Yeah, if you can't get a hold of one, contact me and I'll help you out.
You're even going to gift me one, I think. And I said yes. Yeah. I want please. If you're going to gift it, yes, please. Gifts to this show, yes, are welcome.
Yeah.
Particularly bottles of whiskey, which is not one of the gifts, I know. But all right, so I think we better now. Godwin and I could talk forever. And that's not what we're about. We've had very, very long conversations. So I'm being very disciplined here. And producer Luke will get very angry with me if I don't kind of finish this up. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Godwin for being on my podcast, also for allowing me to come and interview you in your studio here in Melbourne. And I want to say thank you for listening, and I want to say thank you to Godwin, and then of course a special mention to my daughter who's been helping me out today on the camera and with the recording today. Bye for now.